Hello, welcome to our November book chat. We are so excited. Today we're going to be talking about both of ours personal favorite books, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. We are so excited to be talking about it today together.
Yes,
so let's jump right in. Rachel?
Okay. So the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, what a mouthful. I think the only reason I remember it is because I've read it so many times. I think I've read this book probably at least 5 times. I read it in January of this year, listened to it on audio, and then just now reread it this past weekend. So I think I added it to Goodreads in 2012, but I think that was a reread. And so I'm pretty sure I read it probably soon after it was out, and I cannot remember where I heard about it, but I love it. It is definitely one of my favorite books. What about you?
Yeah, so I always remember the cover.
Yes.
And it being an odd name. I could never remember what the name was. So when I first started working at the library, I was a shelver. So I would return any books that were returned, I would reshelve. So I always remember keep an eye out for books, and that looks cool. And this was one that always was I knew nothing about it. I just knew the cover looked cool and the name was interesting, and I wanted to read it one day. But then you go back to remember, what was that book I wanted to read? I can never remember the name. So it was on my radar, but always one I forgot about.
Okay.
So when you then suggested it to me probably last year,
okay,
I think we maybe started talking about it, and you had asked if I read it. And so I read it for the first time last summer.
Okay.
And I was so excited. So I was when it clicked, then I connected the two, oh, that's the book I've been eyeing all these years. I want to read. I was so excited to read it.
Okay.
So this is my second read through.
Okay. Yeah, I remember before our library got reorganized, I can remember where it was on the shelf.
Oh, isn't that funny how we do that?
Yeah. Okay, tell us a little bit about the plot.
Okay, so this book is, and Rachel corrects me every time, an
epistolary?
It's epistolary.
Epistolary.
It means it is written in letter form. So the book is set in 1946, and it is shortly after World War II has finished. And Juliet is an author, and she's trying to find her next book that she would like to write. During the war, she wrote newspaper articles about funny things that happened during the war, just to sort of lighten the mood, to keep people's spirits up, but she wants to do something different. And so these are letters from her to her publisher, to her friend, expressing these interests in writing something new. And then come to find out that one of her books, her personal books that she owns, ends up on this island called Guernsey. And a group of people there who started a literary club, one of them read her books, saw her name in it, and decided to write her to let her know that they had her books and enjoyed it, and if they had any other suggestions for things to read. And it starts this correspondence between her and these people on this island. She piques her interest about their society, wants to know more about it, and possibility of writing a story about them. So it creates this bond and friendship with this love for literature, and it just takes them on a journey of meeting each other and creating these friendships, and it's a romance. And a good old
fiction. Yeah.
and
it's quirky and funny too.
Yeah, so you get to see everyone's personalities come out throughout their letter writing, and then you see these friendships being formed just through letters, as they're writing to each other.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about the book history, the history of the book itself. There are 2 authors, Marianne Schaefer, and then her niece, Annie Barrows, who is a well-known children's author of the books Ivy and Dean. Have your girls read any of those?
Emma just started one. I didn't connect that to who it was.
Yeah. I told my daughter that last night, and she was like, what? That's so cool.
Yeah, and I did not realize that the authors were related. I didn't know that either.
Yes, so Mary Ann actually took a trip to Guernsey. She was wanting to write this biography about this other person. She got stuck in the Guernsey airport because of fog, couldn't get to where she wanted to go. This was in 1980. And so she was such a lover of books. She was like, well, I'll just read what's in the airport bookstore. And she started reading all of these histories about the island of Guernsey. And she decided then she'd scrap the biography and write this book.
Yeah.
So fast forward, she turns in a manuscript in 2006.
Okay.
And like was going well. It got sent back to her in 2008, and there was a lot of like rewrites and edits that needed to be done, but she had fallen ill. And so she did not have the energy to do it. And so she asked her niece, who was an author, to do it. And so her niece like put aside all of her projects and did this because her aunt, Mary Ann, ends up passing away. And then Annie like finishes up the edits and it's published after Mary Ann's death. Yeah, so it was published in 2008. And it has been published in over 37 countries and in 32 languages. It was on the New York Times bestsellers list for 11 weeks and reached #1 bestseller.
That's awesome.
A little bit about the book. And of course, then it also became a movie in 2018. I think it like, you're going to tell us a little bit more about that, right? Okay.
Yes. So the movie, in 2018, the movie was released actually in England and France first, in April and June of 2018. And then that fall in October, Netflix, being good old Netflix, picked it up and offers it to the masses here in the United States. And it was on Netflix then October 2018. The movie grossed $15.7 million worldwide. So it was a hit. It seemed to do well. Yeah. But Rotten Tomatoes, which is a movie scoring site where they do critics review it and then the audience, it actually has an 80% critic score and an 81% audience score. So it did well with critics and audience.
Okay, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah,
and
so
have you seen it, Lana?
I have, yeah.
Did you watch it before you read the book?
No, I read the book first.
Okay.
Yes, I read the book first. I have a weird thing. If I can read the book first, I will.
Yeah.
Sometimes it always doesn't work out, but I did read the book first, and then I watched it. And it's good. It's an enjoyable. I would definitely recommend read. I don't feel like you have to read one before the other. I think
there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot in the book that you don't get from the movies, like some personal thoughts of people, back history. The movies, there's a lot more point per point. This is just what happens.
Right.
Because it's not as much of the letter writing. You know, there's not much of that correspondence. It's hard to film that. But yeah, the movie is very good. It's very good. And it's actually, there's times in the book they're talking about like the effects of the war and the tragedies they went through. But when you're seeing it, sometimes the letters, why it was like, oh, it was sad, it's sort of a different perspective from it than seeing it. Right. So I thought some of the stories were a little bit more devastating or more heart-wrenching because you saw it. Yeah. So I would say like it was a good balance of like the book was better, but the movie offered a new look at it.
Yeah, I would say this isn't like a heavy World War II book.
No.
They definitely talk about some awful things and it kind of takes your breath away, but then it kind of jumps to the next letter. And there's kind of like the storyline around Remy that's not really in the movie, although but like you were saying, the heavier parts that show up in the movie are a little more. I think that just happens.
Yeah.
Like books versus movies.
When you're confronted with it on your fate. Yeah, it's different. You know, they always say like books, you can only imagine what you know. Movies, you don't even know and it's there. Right. Like you can't imagine anymore because they're right there.
Yes.
So it was good. Yeah, you're right. Because in the book, you can go 3 or 4 letters and it's funny little witty things and then it's a really sad story, but then it jumps right back to a witty. So it balances, but then you might lose some of that tragedy.
Right. And I think that that's some of the criticisms of the book is that it's a little all over the place. And people have said, well, you know, maybe if she would have been able to do the edits herself or whatever, that's just kind of par for the course. But I didn't mind that.
Yeah, and I feel like it is those, like your mind can fill in some of those gaps with, like, it is sort of an interesting perspective because in books you can just sort of tell everything that's going on that the character may not know that's going on. But in this, you're only seeing what is being told. And so you sort of have to fill in some of those gaps of like, well, what happened in between the letter? Like when they got there.
It's the book starts in January 1946. That's when the first letters were in, and then the end is like the end of September. So it kind of takes you right into fall, which is kind of why we chose it. But yeah, there's a lot of jumps sometimes between letters, or you get caught up in the Juliet and this person writing, and then all of a sudden you jump
Juliet and
to,
another person's relationship.
and she introduced new characters kind of in the middle of the book, even middle and latter part of the book. So, and
like some characters have one letter, and then you don't, or one or two, and then they're not like, at the end. They don't have any more. Because how many characters overall? I didn't count. I was gonna count before we got on. Is there letters?
I don't know. That would be fun. We might have to look that up and post it with this video. There's at
least like 10 different voices being lettered. Like
easy.
Like off the top of my head, I could think of like 10 that write letters to her.
Yes. Easy.
Her included, yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of people to keep track of.
Yeah. So what did you think? Like, I love epistolary novels. They're some of my favorite. But I know, like with Dracula, you had a bit of a hard time. Did you have a hard time with this one the first time?
No.
Okay.
No, I loved it. Like I grew up actually, and I didn't think about it until I read this last summer that I'd actually experienced this type of writing before. I would have said this is my first. But those like Dear America books, I don't know if you ever grew up with those, where they were historical fictions for like middle grade students. Okay. And they would take like a point in history. So like, I'm trying to think, like the wagon trails. That's one of my favorites. Like, the one they take, so that's the character is a child whose family is about to go on the wagon trail, and the whole book is just journal entries about her experience. So it's Dear Diary, this is happening today. And there's a whole collection of there. There's one on Native Americans, there's one on the wagon trail, there's one on the Titanic, and it's all.
Have you read These Is My Words?
No, but I think that's the boys' version.
No, this is like an adult. This is an adult novel that. Totally aside.
Okay.
But, like, settlers, like Western expansion. You have
you told me about that. I think I started it last year after this one, and I don't think I finished it, so I need to pick it up again.
It's a lot heavier than this.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So having that. After I started reading, I realized, I grew up on this. And I love those books because you got a real firsthand account of what was happening.
It does feel a lot more personal.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it almost feels like you're peeking into someone's private conversation.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it.
Like to know people's inner thoughts, or like to read somebody else. I mean, I love finding old letters from like my parents or my grandparents. And it's definitely more intimate. When you can read somebody's letters. And I even like the back and forth because it feels like, okay, like where's the story going? I like the like mystery or like the tension in that and like the expectation that's built up to like see where it's gonna go and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that I think my mom, because I recommended to her, I don't think she finished it because she wasn't able, like that wasn't her preference. She's like, I got lost. She's like, she wasn't invested enough in the characters that by the time that she got back towards the end, she's like, I'm not really caring. Where I was like, no, read the next letter.
Yeah. All right. So which of the voices were most memorable to you? And like we talked a little bit about like to read a variety of responses around a shared tragedy, like how you really, I think, saw a more full picture.
Yes.
And seeing all of those variety of voices. And also didn't get too heavy because then you would jump to something else. And so for me, it kept me in the story because I didn't want to like tap out.
Yeah.
No. But which voices were most memorable for you?
So for me, and then having read it again, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Isola?
In my head, it's Isola, but.
Okay. Her voice, like even when I think back last year, having read, like when I think about the book, I think about her relationship with Juliet and like her experience. Well, it wasn't the heaviest, but just her little like moments with all the other people, and her, she just latches on to Juliet too, and this friendship between these two women are bonded.
Yeah.
Like it was a really sweet. I really like her voice in that. And then there's
He was
an older
one of my
gentleman.
favorites too.
Yeah, there's an older gentleman. I can't remember his name. Ben. Is it Ben that has the grandson?
Eben.
Thank you.
Eben.
Where his grandson
is Eli.
Yes.
Yes.
His voice to me
Okay.
and his perspective on, losing a child in the war, raising a child of his, and then just, his voice stands out to me.
Yeah. I really love Isola. I felt like that was, in the movie, the most underdone.
Yes.
And so that was a little disappointing, but then you could still enjoy the movie, but I absolutely love her. And I even liked Adelaide because she's kind of like the antagonist,
Yeah.
She's the voice that is against everybody else, and it was funny, a funny part. So what facts about life in England during World War II were surprising to you? Did you learn anything new?
Like you said, it's not a heavy, it's historical fiction. It's not heavy on the historical, ton of facts. I think the bombings in England,
okay.
with whole building, so the main character loses her apartment building, and it's a real tragedy for her. That aspect of it, I don't know why that was shocking, because there was I knew there was bombings, but that whole inner city, you think of out in field, or you think in Guernsey, an island that no one thinks about, but right in the heart of England, there was these bombings. Yeah, that threw me a little bit.
And the description of just the building half gone, but she could still see her curtain fluttering in the breeze. And I've been to London, and so it's just shocking to be to try to imagine that. And even at the end, when I think it was Amelia went with Dawsey to go get Remy, and she talked about France and just how she's oh, we didn't have it so bad. The island, even though they had it pretty bad. Yeah. Really bad. But they were still clearing stuff. Whereas, a year later, Guernsey was kind of doing better.
I think another
I didn't
thing
know about the Guernsey Islands. I didn't know
no.
this part of England that was occupied. So I remember when I first read it, looking it up to see if it was real. I'm wait.
Yeah. Is this just a fictional place that we've I think for me too, which I really appreciate in the book, and having read it again, it was even more I'm really glad she gave that, is that perspective on the German soldiers in Guernsey, and how, yes, some of them were your typical German soldier. They also one of the characters ends up having a relationship with the German soldier. But you see the humanity in them, they're just young boys or young men who were fighting a war that they maybe didn't even believe in, or were just doing their job.
Part of the army of their country they lived in.
And the humanity, and some of them showing kindness, and some of them, one of them, Dossie, one of the main male character, describes becoming friends with one of the soldiers. He's we formed this bond. We're both stuck on this island. Mine because it's my home, and him because you're occupying it. Yeah. But we're both stuck here. They found a commonality and formed an unlikely bond or friendship in that time. I was very appreciative, because I think we can very much pigeonhole this was all the German soldiers.
These people are good. These people are bad.
Yeah, and there was good people on the bad side. and they just were
bad people on the good side, right?
Exactly.
There's so many informants and things.
Yeah. So I appreciated that aspect to shift my thinking on that.
I I don't know how to pronounce it. It's TODT. The tot workers, they forced slave the men. Basically they said 15-year-old boys, which I have a 14-year-old. It's really just hard to think about. But so I looked that up. There's organization tot was this thing, and it was named after the last name of a Nazi. Okay. And basically they said it was Himmler's plan, death by exhaustion, which I'd heard of in concentration camps, but did not know there were slave workers that were sent out to all the different parts of the occupied countries. So that was new, and just the description of everything, the parts where they described what they went through, and how they were starving. I mean, They had nothing that was.
Which is what spurred the, I guess I didn't really say that in the description, spurred the Literary Society. So they ended up keeping a pig that was supposed to have died, and they like are storing this pig, and it gets big enough they have to kill it to eat it. And so that's what spurred them. The lady that has it needs the man to come and kill it, and he gathers a bunch of people. Hey, let's just get all these people, and they have this feast. And so that hunger became something that initiated this gathering, which was not allowed because they were out.
They were out past curfew.
Yeah. So when confronted, the alibi was, well, we're a literary society. So that hunger spurred something that became something more. You know, it was interesting. In the
there
book
were people that really didn't weren't a part of each other's lives, really. And Elizabeth, she's like the central character that is off screen, so to say.
We never have a letter
the
from
connection between all of them. So, okay, last question. How are we doing on time? We're doing well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you agree with Isola Pribby that reading good books ruins you for enjoying bad ones?
I think I do. I think there's something, I know we talked about this in Twilight and Dracula, the idea of a bad book. Like, it's not a great fluffy thing. Yeah. That it has no value, and there are times and places for that. But I think if you read enough good literature, it's like watching really good movies than watching like a B-rated movie that you're like, it's not the same. I think books are the same. You get a good story in good literature, and then you read one that lacks, and it's like, oh, because you see the potential and where you could have.
Right. Yeah, and I think that this is a common problem for people who read and read a lot. You finish a good book, and then you have what's called a book hangover. You're like, well, what can I read next? Will anything ever top that?
Yeah. Sometimes you have rebound books because you just know nothing's I just have to read something else just to get back in the groove because this one,
And I would say that's usually when I pull out a fluffy book because I'm like, this is going to be quick, and it just keeps me in the groove.
Exactly. You want to keep that muscle in tune.
But I think that in this society, they kind of like, that's what they read some good ones, and they were like, oh, it was a good experience for some of them. I kind of skipped over, like, which of the members had similar tastes to your own. Did any of them?
I don't know. It was hard to tell because they're reading such old book
I hadn't heard of, and I looked them up, and they're real things.
Yeah. Darcy probably. I don't know.
I would say Isola, just because she was reading like Bronte, and then she got introduced to Jane Austen, and that's number one ones I've heard of.
Yeah.
But I really liked, the one guy that just read the one thing over and over, and it reminded him of his daily life, and he could always relate it back to that. That made me laugh because I do that with Friends, like the TV show.
Oh, yes.
They're like,
it's like a comfort.
Any scenario. And
yes.
So
that's true.
I forget what his name is. He was like one of the leader characters, and I forget what his name. But
yeah.
All right. I have some fun facts.
Okay.
Real quick. Yes, we have time. Okay. Charles Lamb. So you had said that it was one of Juliet's books that he was wanting more of. It was like one of her books that she'd owned. So it had it. But it was by Charles Lamb, who was a real person, a real author, and they talked about, I forget the name of the person that painted him. But that's like, it's real, and I have a picture.
Oh!
So this is Charles Lamb, and this is the portrait.
Wow. Not too bad.
I know. Yeah. So when they said something about like Dawsey kind of reminded her of Charles Lamb or something, I thought that was kind of interesting. So Marianne and Annie, the authors of the book, they're American. Didn't realize that. I thought they were British.
Yeah.
Okay. So then there's a cartoon that they mentioned. I think like they got newspapers, like old newspapers, and they didn't understand some of the cartoons in them.
Like the
one about
humor.
what?
like the political humor, like that we would
Yes,
see.
there's one that says it's ridiculous to say these flying bombs have affected people in any way, and they were talking about like the doodle bugs because they were bombs that would come. She explained it that they were bombs that would come during the daytime, so there weren't any like night raid warnings. I found that.
Oh wow.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
Their one ear is bigger than the other.
Yeah, because they're keeping a watch or ear out for it.
Listening, yeah.
So in Guernsey, they wouldn't have had that, you know. So for them, they see this news, they're like, what is this? Like,
yeah, they weren't being bombed. They didn't get that there were like daytime bombs and nighttime bombs. And then I just wanted to kind of like, unless if you have something else, but otherwise I have something to read to like wrap it up.
Yeah, go for
it. Annie Barrow, the niece author, she wrote this like in her notes, like author's notes at the very end. And it's kind of about books and reading the books that we love. She, if I could have anything I wanted, I would choose story without end. And it seems that I have lots of company in that. I received many, many letters from readers all over the world bemoaning the fact that the books come to an end. I want it to go on forever, they say. I want to go to Guernsey and join a book club. I want to be a member of the society. The good news is that as long as we don't get too caught up in the space-time continuum, the book does still go on. Every time a reader talks about it with another reader, the membership of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society increases each time the book is read and enjoyed. The wonderful thing about books, and the thing that made them such a refuge for the islanders during the occupation, is that they take us out of our time and place and understanding and transport us not just into the world of the story, but into the world of our fellow readers who have stories of their own. This profusion of questions, exclamations, and tales is the new version of the society. Its members are spread all over the world, but they are joined by their love of books, of talking about books, and of their fellow readers. We are transformed magically into the literary society each time we pass a book along, each time we ask a question about it, and each time we say, if you liked that, I bet you'd like this. I just love that. Like,
that's
what
awesome.
we do, right?
Yeah. And it's sort of a nod to our, the reading promise that we did a couple months ago.
Yes.
The idea of that, keeping that love of reading going, and by interacting in that one-on-one, we are doing that, keeping it alive.
Yeah. So that's Lynn and I obviously love to talk about books. Yeah. So we hope that if you have not read this one yet, that you pick it up. It's really such a great story.
Yeah.
And so then we are going to do another book for December, right?
Yeah. So to end out 2020, obviously December is, Christmas. And so we decided to just honor that and go full born Christmas spirit. So we have The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Yes. This is written by Barbara Robinson. And it's actually a pretty old book. My copy is falling apart. I can't remember when it was published. I'm going to look quick before we got on.
Okay.
Because it was originally published in 1972. Okay. So this book has been around for a long time. So many of you might have read it. It's a very small book, very quick. It's technically a children's title, but adults will appreciate the older humor because there's a lot of references to things that nowadays kids we don't know.
And I know this story really well, but have never read it. So
really,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that when we picked it. Yeah, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It will make you like belly giggle, laugh, and then tear up, and it's just it's Christmas.
A heartwarming story. Yeah, it's perfect for Christmas time and the holidays.
Yeah, so we'll be starting that after Thanksgiving next week.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving day. Thanks for watching.
Enjoy, and don't eat too much pie, or do, and just enjoy it.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye.